To become a great watchmaker, one must learn from a great teacher. And I had the opportunity to visit a great watchmaking school in Locle, Switzerland. Welcome and thanks for joining me. I love meeting people and really talking about watchmaking and watches. As I was visiting Switzerland a couple months ago, I had reached out to Henrik Korpela, who is the founder and instructor of the Korpela and Hofs Watchmaking Competence Center, which is an independent Swiss watchmaking school that teaches students from all over the globe. I was in Geneva and we caught a train to La Chaux-de-Fonds, and because we were a bit there early, we decided to take a 6 kilometer or 3.7 mile walk to the watchmaking school. During this work, early on, we saw Girard Perregaux GP, Enicar, which I had no idea that they're actually still around. So we've walked about 3 kilometers so far to get to the watchmaking school. I'm pretty sure you're not meant to walk along these roads, especially since the footpath kind of blended into the freeway. But right behind me I stumbled across the greubel forsey manufacturer, which is really cool. I had seen that building on YouTube videos so many times, and I was standing right there. It clicked. As soon as I saw it, I knew exactly what building that was. We eventually got to the watchmaking school and we met with Henrik, who is such a nice and humble person, and he gave us this tour of his whole facility. And we started off in the machine room where, you got Hauser jig borers, a Sierra F1 milling machine, Schaublin 102 lathes, Pantograph, this beast of a tool grinding machine. So I hope you enjoy part 1 of the KHWCC tour. We're in the machine room here at the school, and this is the first machine in the line, which is a jig borer.
Yes, let's think simply about it. For me, it's just a very precise drilling machine. Because we have this down feed here where we would have a drill piece or any other cutting tool. But what is interesting about this machine is that the displacement of the bed here, where you would have, for example, a main plate, it's very, very precise. The precision of it is guaranteed to, I think, if you go from here, here and back here, it's not supposed to be off by more than 3,000 of a millimeter, or 3 micron as we call it also. Micrometer.
So the scales is in a micron?
Yeah, so the first one it's millimeters.
Yep.
Then after the dot we have tenths of a millimeter, and then the most common we use is 100 of a millimeter, and then we have 1000. Yep. So it's extremely small division, if you like, from we have done 5,000 for this distance if you divide to the 1,000. So it's an incredibly small amount of distance moved.
And so for watchmaking, do you think what the resolution would be as an ideal resolution? Do you think 1/100th of a millimeter or 1,000th of a millimeter? What would be the working?
I think for most things we would always work with the 100, but now the precision is getting higher and higher, especially when they use CNC machine. So they are probably standardized it to the 1,000 now when you buy modern watches. And in general terms, I work with 100, but for the more precise parts, I would work to 1 or 2 or 3,000 or something like this. Balanced off pivots would be in 2.5 or 3 micron plus minus value. But it's not for a bridge that you would need that precision. And the students would use this for if they make their main plate, because the locations of the jewel holes, those are important to be rather precise, localized.
Yep. And so for the school watch, is it is it a particular type of caliber that the students make, or do they get to choose?
Since I am run a private school, it's more by discussion with the student. Some students have no interest actually in the school watch and they want to do other projects, maybe restoration projects or whatever. And if they don't know, then I recommend always the 6498, the ETA 6498. It's a very robust and good movement to learn from. Otherwise, I had students who worked with vintage Omega 269 caliber, and some student they just made in the last two batches ago. I had a student who made a very beautiful finishing on a classical column wheel chronograph that he just bought raw or in the regular state as you see them scratched up and so on because they're old, and he just refreshed everything on it. So that was his interest, so he did that. So it's kind of, it depends. Also it depends how well the students are doing in the regular classes. Since if they're behind, it might not be appropriate to do extracurricular work with the school watch. Then it might be more interesting to get back on track, for example. So I have quite a lot of flexibility in the program.
Okay. And so with the school watch, if they're going to start milling out their own bridges, how do you get the measurements first? Do you use the same machine to initiate the measurements between the jewels, or how do you go about that?
It depends if they want to make it from absolute scratch, or if they do it from the 6498, then they can actually use this machine to measure, to do reverse engineering. So they could then put a microscope in here, have the main plate, the original main plate here, and then see where all the holes are, and they would then the values would be indicated on the X and Y axis. And then they would note it down on a sketch. Yep. Or several students have also used inventor programs, and because they get them for free.
Yes.
Like so Fusion. Yeah, Fusion 360 some students used, and some prefer the AutoCAD 2D, classical one.
Yeah, that's what
I have used a few times Inventor, and it's not that difficult to learn. But what I found for me is difficult if I don't use it rather often to go back to it. I then forget where then I have to relearn. So for me now I just do hand sketches, and then I write down the values on a table, and then I work with the sketch and the numbers. And some students actually also prefer, like Pierre, who you met before, he prefers actually to do that.
Okay.
And he's still very young, but he has no interest really to learn the Inventor or AutoCAD. So it's very personal also. How they will work, and I allow that. However, they want to explore watchmaking, and then I try to help them as much as I can.
Oh, very cool. And so with this machine, it has the quill feed to go down, and does the table lift?
So what happens is, if I want to get in range here, and all of them are slightly different. This is a small jig boring machine, but it's not the smallest one that you can buy. Yeah, I would push a button here, and then it goes down like this into range. And once I've found the correct height, then I would use this for the actual drilling. If I start the spindle, then we can hear how it sounds. Low speed, top speed, 3000 RPM is the top speed of this machine.
So it could be used for fine mills and drill bits.
Yeah, very small drill bits. We try not. The machine is not really designed to do heavy milling or drilling much larger than 3 millimeter. And then you would actually need even a bigger spindle, which wouldn't be original, which is never good to attach in a machine like that. So it's not really made to drill large holes or mill big things. That one would be able to mill 10 times larger and much easier. Even though it appears to be small, it's designed specifically for milling.
Okay.
And what you will notice is that here we have like a regular drill press. We're just drilling here. But if you take a look at that, if we want to drill a hole, we would have to mill it, because it's the table that will actually go up like this.
Yep.
And the character just changes completely. So I can mill a centimeter of brass in one shot with this machine, but it would instantly break the cutter.
Okay, wow.
I can't explain exactly why, but I notice observing myself that this it's not designed at all like a drilling machine or what we call a jig boring machine, which I see as a very precise regular drilling machine.
And is it something to do with the shape of the sides? Because this has the dovetails. Does this have...
I think all machines have the dovetail. Yes, they do. You can even check under here, and you can see these here.
Yes.
So it's not really that different. I think it's the head that is not as rigid or something.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not I'm not
no.
a real machinist in that sense. I'm still just a watchmaker.
Yeah.
But so I'm more of a user of the machines. But yeah.
Yep. No. Understand. And so this is the Asira F1?
This is the Asira F1. Yeah, watchmakers and partially, I guess, clockmakers milling machine.
Yeah.
We use it mainly not so much to make parts, but more for making tools or jigs or fixtures to make watchmaking parts.
Yep.
And it's one of the early machines that the students would learn in the course. Actually, all these machines they would first learn, except that one, before they start with the smaller watchmaking parts. Just to learn the basics and how basic classical machines work. Chauvelin 102, this is a toolmaker's lathe, but it's very useful also for watchmakers. And for clockmaking, I would imagine it's actually an ideal lathe. Now it's set up to actually not make any part. These angles or this milling head, because you can also mill in a lathe. Yeah. Is now set up to be able to polish the teeth of ratchet and crown wheels. Okay. And you would then have the ratchet and crown wheel at the spindles turning at a very low speed. Yep. And then you have another spindle, this one here, which will turn in the opposite direction with a polishing disc, which you can see here, it looks like that. And this one would then be attached here. And then I would go close and then just touch the wheel on the edge here.
Okay, and just give that nice little angle on the teeth?
Yeah, I would first grind it with a diamond disc. Looking like this. Yep. With the same angle, just to create the bound.
Yes.
And then I would use that. First I would put some abrasive 3M paper just to make the surface smooth. And then I would remove the 3M paper, and if you notice here, it's a very soft metal, it's tin.
It's tin, yes.
And then it's backed up with some foam here. Can I stab this, by the way?
Oh yeah.
It's my brother's idea.
Oh wow, very cool.
Because everybody are kind of struggling with this system because if it would be a rigid thing,
yes,
this tin will just be ripped by the teeth. It will just eat it up in seconds. But if you have this foam and some slight flex in between, yes, it takes the flatness and sits properly
like a
when
suspension
it's
in
the, and then you get absolutely perfectly flat appearing, which is really a cool technique. So I stole it from my brother.
That's very cool. Very cool. Very smart.
Yeah, extremely. Yeah, and then you could theoretically do once it's properly set up and everything. You could also do it in production this way.
Yep.
So it's for small production, but. And the lathe is incredibly stable. Yeah. It's super stable lathe.
Because what's the weight on this machine?
I would imagine maybe 400 kilo, 500 kilo, 400-500 kilo around this machine. That one would be maybe half that, 250 kilo. Yeah. The Agaton is also 250 kilo. This is also 250 or 200 or something.
Okay.
And that one I don't know. I assume 400-500 kilo. So when you mount everything up, it's many. Yeah. It's several tons in this room.
And so do you use any sort of protection for the lathe if you're polishing or grinding in the lathe? What's your method? Do you have any?
Okay, so we don't really have any safety on the machines themselves.
Yep.
Except the Agaton. That's the only machine that has a safety button, like an emergency shut-off.
Yep.
All these they're just classical machines that I just use in a classical way, and I teach my students to be aware of safety at all times when they use the machines. I do not believe having this all 100% safe here. Then you get used to that, and then it's only the big factories that would have full safety equipment. But the other watchmakers, they work like me here, and then they go there and they use it, and they are not aware of safety because they assume that everything is safe, and that's the most dangerous concept you could ever have. That I don't believe in. So I have since 10 years, I don't believe I had one single accident here.
Yep.
Maybe somebody got a small scratch or something when they did something that they were not supposed to.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think it's the best way
Yep.
to view safety, not to have it.
No.
And we don't have children running around here. It's
That's
all
right.
grown-ups.
Yeah. And then I guess, yeah. So when you're polishing, do you, because for me, I put a bit of Glad wrap. I protect the, you know, the headstock,
yes.
a bit of the bed, just for the grinding paste. Do you do any of that? Is it necessary? I only do it because it's what I've seen online or I've read in
Yeah.
But how?
I never have that much paste that it comes off.
Okay.
It's not like it's splattering around anywhere. It's just a film of paste,
Yeah.
and some might come down here, but then I would just wipe it off. And the paste I use is 1 micron. It's 1000, so it's very small chance that it would cause any harm to the machines.
Yeah.
And there's only one place where I have dry grinding, and that's in the heat treatment room, which is anyway expected to be rather dirty.
Yeah.
And here I do also grinding with a diamond grinder, Dagaton,
Yep.
but it's with
oils,
cooling,
yeah.
so there's no debris or nothing in there actually.
Yep. Very cool.
And yeah, very useful machine for making parts, but also
Yes.
polishing. It's so universal.
Yep.
And I even have the complete set of collets.
Wow. Okay.
From 0.2 millimeters. I could hold
0.2?
0.2. That's very small actually.
Yeah, I've never
0.2.
seen.
Normally they start at 0.5,
Okay.
but they're 0.2.
And so these
And
5C, 3C, what's the?
20 W25.
Oh, W25,
The-
yes.
Yeah, because the
Oh,
70 is W12.
I think W20.
20,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I should know. And that's
Yeah.
the same size lathe, also Chauvelin 102, but this one is just a different setup. Here you have a mechanical low and high gear,
Okay.
but there you have only the open belt drive.
Yes.
So you don't have this super low gear that turns 2 revolutions a second, I think it is.
Okay.
So you won't have the same torque. This has more torque than this can have.
So is this geared head? Sorry, or just?
Yeah, you have like some sort of mechanical.
Like a back gear or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Okay.
And it locks in like this also. So yeah, I won't set it
Yeah.
now. So I would have to turn the head
Yes,
to another
yeah.
position and then find the gear. So you
Yeah.
can't change the gear in when it's running, for example.
Yeah. Unless you want to hear. A
Exactly.
Very unpleasant
Yeah,
noise.
yeah. It's not so interesting, but we have it anyway because it's a classical tool machine to actually, yeah, it's like a small drilling machine, very useful machine. I don't want to promote it for every watchmaker to buy because you certainly don't need something like that.
Yeah.
The purpose is to, in a very simple fashion, grind carbide or hard metal gravers for all the machines that we have here.
Yeah.
And you would just put your graver here, set up the angles for the clearance and rake or whatnot.
Yeah.
And then this would be spinning and you just go in with it. You have to learn how to use it, of course.
Yeah.
And then within seconds you have a fresh graver basically.
Yeah.
And since all of our graver have all the same standard angle, I could go through all the gravers for all the machines here and within half an hour they are done.
Yeah, very good. I first saw this machine in Brad Taylor's blog.
Yeah.
When he was here as a student with you, and then as soon as I saw it, I was like, I started researching. Yeah, this is the machine for me for grinding the tools, because I think like grinding tools, especially when you're first getting into machining, and there's all the different angles, and sometimes the side relief, end relief, it's all a bit too much at once, and you don't know how to get the angles correct. And everyone on the forums is very specific about, you know, this has to be certain degrees, and you can fall for that trap. And then, but as soon as I saw the price and the weight, and that, I knew. I thought, no, I don't need this machine.
Exactly. I mean, it's very pleasant to use, but it's a really a luxury machine.
Yeah.
But I mean, this one probably in this state, like very perfectly restored and so on, it would probably cost between 10 to 15,000 Swiss franc or US dollar. But I recently had a student in Italy who found one for 250 euro.
Oh wow!
And it wasn't the best condition, but he just restored it.
Yeah.
And spent a few weekends and then he restored everything. So all of these machines theoretically could cost just a few $100s. And they might not be that bad state. It could be also somebody who want to get rid of them because they no longer use it in their industry. And it just takes up space and weight, and they might just give it away even. Or for a very, very good price you can get. So you can get them, but then I would rather see, do you have the space? Because it takes also up also a specific space. And then I think it's not the first machine you would need. And then I don't think you need to go too theoretical with the gravers. In the end, I guess just start with a graver that cuts. And then slowly experiment with different clearances and rakes and whatnot, and see what will actually work. But in reality, it's not like, oh, you have to have exactly 4-degree rake and 2-degree clearance to cut this type of steel. Sure, it's the optimized version, but we as watchmakers, do we really need that when we're turning by hand? There's nothing theoretical when you're turning by hand. It's just, it cuts or not cut. And it can cut a nice surface or not. So I think it's a lot of trial and error and experimenting what works. Your Daniels have also quite good sections for the gravers, I think, And then you have another guy who is also very good, the American author
Archie Perkins.
Yes. I would get all those books because there's so much you can learn there. And then you can get, together with the George Daniels watchmaking, those in combination are fantastic for learning micromechanics. This is the last machine I bought. Actually, I bought it from my case maker, the guy who made the white gold case for the Patek Philippe that I wrote an article on SGX with. And that's the guy I bought, and he didn't need this anymore because he can also do hand engraving. And I guess he doesn't have this product. This is a Pantograph, and a Pantograph is a machine which you use to engrave. But because it has a spindle, a cutting spindle where you can put end mills, you can also cut spare parts for movements. Here is one that we did in a course here. This one here, and it's from a classical chronograph, in this case a Value 22. Even Patek Philippe and Rolex, I think, use this movement. So it's very, very famous, together with the 72 smaller version of it. And here it's the hammer that the student, he first draw it in a profile projector. And then he draw outline outside the part. The part is on the inside here. And the second line, that's the track where the sensor, so I would put this drawing here, which would be the original drawing for the client's watch. And then you would follow the sensor with the outside line like that. Then at the same time, down here, the spindle is moving. Exactly in the same pattern, but smaller, because you can adjust these two handles here to any size. The smallest size I can do is 50 times smaller. So 1-to-1, and then anything down to 50 times smaller. And this one will be 20 times smaller. So now it's probably set up for 20 times smaller.
And so when you use it, you don't make like a big part and have it running around the edge of a part. Do you always do it by hand?
I also do like this. If I know that I'm gonna do several pieces, see like this. Here is the symbol of the school, and it's just a milled track that I actually did in the jig boring machine. Previously. And then then you would just have this plate here. Then it would be working much more accurate. You would then clamp this down, and then now you can't actually make any mistake. But when you make watch parts, it takes far too long time to make this plate first. Maybe you have only 1 hour to make the part. Then you can't make this 3 hour, and then. So what I do is I just go by hand, and each mistake I know will be 20 times smaller down there. And I always make sure I go outside the line, and the rest I'm trimming in the lathe with a diamond disc. Or so by hand filing.
Hold this by hand on like a jig of some sort of.
That's also another. I actually do it. I have a plate where I have the part on like a support. Like this one.
Is it like a kind of like a little saw table?
It's exactly that.
Yes. Okay. All right. Yes. Yes.
And this has two sizes: a larger disc here and a smaller.
Yes. So you have the part flat on here.
Yeah.
And the grinding disc sits in this
Yeah.
slot. Okay.
And then I would by hand go around
Yes.
and trim it
Okay.
to the correct size. And once in a while I would go with the drawing would be in the profile projector and I would put it there
Yes.
and then compare until it's exactly the same pattern.
Okay. And so on the pantograph, you take into consideration half the tool diameter. Is that right?
Yeah,
Is that why-
here I have chosen, that's why you have the distance here, because I have chosen to use 1 millimeter.
Okay.
And with the 20 time drawing, this would be 20 millimeter across.
Yeah.
So it's the radius that is going around, which is 10 millimeter here.
And so how by hand do you offset this line? Is it just...
Oh, I just put a compass
Oh, yep.
at that distance, and then the needle is following here, and then it's automatic. It's so easy.
Yeah.
So I
That's
mean,
smart.
this one here, you can imagine it's like 20 minutes to do.
Yeah.
Because you just follow an outline on a big screen that we will also have a look later.
Yep.
So a child can do this.
Yeah.
Even.
So
And a child can actually make watch parts. Honestly, it's like a child's game and extremely fun to do.
Yeah.
But of course you need to learn how to set everything up, but once you know it's like a game almost.
Yeah, that's very
And then half an hour or so designing. Longer if the part is missing. If the part is missing, you will have to redesign according to the function and the outside parts which is interacting with. So that's obviously harder to do. But if it's only been worn out at the faces, or a watchmaker filed too much here, everything else is gonna be the same as the original. So you might do that, and then you just add a little bit more extra material that you file to size later.
Yeah. Just going back to designing the part without having where it's missing. I heard an interview you did recently where you do that to your students, and they go through the process and learn how to actually make parts from scratch where they are missing in the watch.
Yeah, they have to learn that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very obviously important for a watchmaker, especially with all the old watches out there. You can't just throw away an old watch, and I don't think people do. If you have an expensive watch, I'm tired of this, maybe you put it in a drawer and buy a new one. But then you go back 10 years later, I had that one, that was really nice, but it broke.
Yeah.
Maybe it's now time to bring it to a watchmaker. And, and value during the same time is probably going up. So, if you have maybe noticed, we have produced a lot of expensive watches in Switzerland. They all will need to, but watches are increasing in number. So it's very interesting for the future, and more independent watchmakers start to use it. Idea also came from George Daniels.
Okay.
That's where I got the idea initially from.
Because you mentioned it on your other interview as well about the Japanese watchmaker who's doing this.
Masahiro Kikuno, I think his name is. Yeah,
I've seen on Instagram.
Very impressive, actually. Very impressive.
There's a video on YouTube where it shows him working the pantograph and by hand too, like following the actual drawings, not running into like a groove of a part. So.
Exactly. It's impressive. It's very fascinating to see that. I'm very happy that it's also not only me who have it and use it. It's more and more watchmakers who start. It's like a small trend, I think, now. Okay. So it's also, I know watchmakers in Austria, Germany. I think some people in Switzerland also starting to use it. So it's just gonna be more and more used, I think, in the future.